Let's now turn to Louisiana Senator David Vitter. He's a Republican member of the Senate Armed Services Committee who joins us today from New Orleans. Senator, good to see you.
Great to see you, Eric. Good to be with you.
Yeah, as always, you know, the president will lay out plans for what they call upward mobility in 48 hours from now. What do you want to hear from him?
Well, what I want to hear is things we can work on together to really move the ball forward. And Mitch McConnell mentioned many of those things waiting to get done, like the Keystone permit. There is wide bipartisan consensus on initiatives like that. Nevertheless, the president is stuck in the mud on it. Unfortunately, I think what we're going to hear is something different. First of all, talking about executive action, doubling down on that, even though, in my opinion, he's gone beyond his authority in many areas already. And secondly, I think it's a strategy to change the subject from Obamacare. So I think his main political goal, and I do think this is a 99% political speech, is to change the subject.
Well, you know, you talk about Obamacare. Take a look for a second at what the Investor's Business Daily, their editorial is pretty scathing about the State of the Union. It says what President Obama is unlikely to say in his lengthy address is that income inequality, as measured by the Census Bureau's Gini Index, or GINI, has increased faster in his watch than it did under any of the previous presidents. On his watch, inequality has reached its highest level since, what, 1947? And President Obama is almost certain to avoid mentioning the policies he's pushing now have had little or no impact.
And Eric, that's not by accident. Actually, his policies have had impact. It's made it worse because we have a very mediocre economy in terms of job creation. Meanwhile, he's pushed and supported the Fed printing a lot more money. That's given a buzz, a sugar buzz, if you will, to the stock market. So wealthier folks who are invested in the stock market more than others are doing great. So that has actually exacerbated income inequality. He's made it worse.
But he's going to talk about increasing the minimum wage. Will that do it?
Won't do it for a few reasons, because you can't just legislate prosperity. We need to do things to actually get people better job opportunities, and I don't think that alone, without being coupled with other pro-jobs measures, is going to pass the Republican House.
And what we need to do to get better job making capabilities, as you say, do you think you will hear that from the president on Tuesday night? Look, unemployment, long-term unemployment, 39% of those long-terms still can't get jobs after 6 months.
Right. I think he's going to focus on income inequality because that's their way to change the subject. I don't think he's going to focus on what I would consider positive job creation, growing the economy, particularly since he's responsible for most of the overregulation, overtaxation, growth of government spending and debt. That's at the heart of the problem.
Well, what is he going to say about that when you talk about overregulation? I mean, there are hundreds and 40,000 new laws that have been passed by state and local governments this year?
Unfortunately, I think what you're going to hear is we need to do more of that. I think he's going to talk about more action, more administrative regulation, particularly in the area of the environment.
Finally, what can Congress do and what can the Senate do, democratically controlled, in order to try and address some of these issues that you talk about today?
Well, two things. First of all, I work with conservatives all the time to put forward positive initiatives that will grow the economy. Secondly, I work on another set of concerns in a bipartisan way, things that I think we can move forward, like a water resources bill that we're going to do, like a highway bill maybe later this year. Hopefully we can pass a responsible farm bill, things like that.
And finally, he's going to step in front of the Congress, and of course the Democrats will be applauding. Usually, you know, the Republicans like sit on their hands sometimes. This comes, as we hear in the Washington Post, there's a 3-page memo from the White House saying they're just going to sidestep Congress and take executive action.
Right.
How's that going down?
Well, again, as I said at the beginning, that's very troubling to me. That's clearly his game plan for the entire rest of the situation, to double down on governance by administrative fiat, even after he's gone overboard and beyond the legal line in many, many cases, in my and other constitutional conservatives' opinion.
And what does that mean?
That means we have a real constitutional problem. This president, more than anyone before him, has gone beyond his authority. You know, there's always a disagreement about a president's authority between the president and Congress, but this goes way beyond that traditional disagreement. I think he's clearly overstepped that line in many, many cases.
Well, finally, he's a constitutional lawyer. I mean, Harvard, like you, he'll say that he has the power and the ability to do that.
Well, look, I think in many cases he clearly doesn't. It's difficult to bring these things to court. It's very time-consuming and expensive, but we collectively are in many cases, and he's actually being slapped down. A good example is the unconstitutional so-called recess appointments. Conservatives who have said, again, he acted unconstitutionally, have won so far on that. It's going to the Supreme Court, and I think we're going to win there.
All right, Senator David Vitter, Republican of Louisiana, who will be in the House chamber on Tuesday listening. Thank you so much for joining us today
Thank you,
on the
Eric.
Fox News Channel, as always.